Despite the great depth of Monogatari analysis content on this site, I've been very hard pressed to find any videos that discuss Hachikuji in a more analytical light, and well, of course I'm going to rectify that today, but I think through writing this script for this video, I've kind of found out why this is the case, as frankly Hachikuji is a bloody hard character to analyse and is really unique in this aspect when compared to the rest of the cast. But even so, I'll give it my best shot, and so that's what we shall discuss today. If you find yourself entertained at any point during the video, then consider liking, subscribing and ringing that bell, as I cannot explain to you how much just a small action could do for this channel. And if you want to go the extra mile to support this channel even further, then you can always consider pledging to my Patreon. Anyway, on with the video. The name Hachikuji Mayoi is probably the most easiest understood name in all of Monogatari, specifically because it's directly explained in Bakemonogataris, but even so it's important to analysing her character, so I will go over it here. The name Hachikuji can be read as 89 Temple, which is, to skip the explanation, basically a reference to a pilgrimage, which is a journey of spiritual importance. This not only lines up with the wandering nature of Hachikuji, but also could be in reference to her overall arc of going on a journey which ends in her finding purpose through a spiritual event, her becoming a god. And while the temple part of her name may even be a hint to this, as she becomes the god of a shrine, or in other words a temple, she quite literally goes on a pilgrimage which ends at a temple which becomes her home at the end of the story. Her given name Mayoi then also links to this, as it means true twilight. A rather somber name indeed. However, Mayoi is also a homonym for, which means either to go astray or an inability to reach enlightenment. And while both of these fit very nicely indeed, as not only did she go astray and become an eternally lost wandering spirit, but due to this she was unable to pass on to the afterlife, and further wasn't able to reach enlightenment, or maybe another word could be godhood, till she stopped being astray and found her home at the end of her pilgrimage. Her design is also quite easy to understand as well. She's a snail, her hair looks like antennas, her backpack is like a shell, and of course the snail's significance to her character is that snails don't ever get anywhere, they are slow, they never seem to reach their destinations, much like Hachikuji, and the fact her hair never changes throughout the story represents how she doesn't change, that she is already dead, unable to change or age, something further shown by the plaster on her knee, as even a simple graze will never heal for a dead girl, as Hachikuji is quite frankly dead as can be. Hachikuji, when we first meet her in the series, is a lost girl trying to find her way home. She desires to visit her mother after having died trying to when she was still alive. However, due to her nature as a lost cow, she can never reach her destination, instead dooming all who encounter her to being lost. Those who don't wish to return home or wish to become lost, they are the only ones who can see her. Hachikuji, due to be it bad luck or maybe fate, was unable to visit her mother in life. She tried to go at it herself despite her young age and ended up dead as a result. She tried to do something too ambitious and so flew too close to the sun and was hit by a moving vehicle. In some ways then her death could be seen as a cautionary tale of what happens when you aim too high and when you attempt something you cannot achieve. However, I think this is a far too cynical way to look at it. Instead, I believe what we can learn from Hachikuji's death is not the dangers of doing something, but the beauty of relying on others. As despite all her efforts, she never got anywhere. Only when she accepted help did she finally get to go home. As well, Araki didn't save her by bringing her to her mother's house. No, he saved her by becoming her friend. As a home isn't just a place, it's the people too. Hachikuji's biggest flaw was that she did things alone. Even as a wandering spirit, she tried to push people away and so never got anywhere in a decade of wandering. All until she accepted the help of a teenage boy who, like her, was far from home. Hachikuji then had to simply rely on others. In the same way her being a lost child is relevant to her being lost in more ways than one, the child part is equally important, as even if she has been wandering dead for over a decade, she is still a child. Like how a snail, no matter how long time passes, never gets very far, Hachikuji, no matter how far she wanders, never gets any older. Children don't like to admit they can't do something, they don't like to admit their own shortcomings, their own immaturity. But at the end of the day, they are kids, so it's completely understandable that they need a little help. However, Hachikuji doesn't want the help of others, in part due to being, as said, a bratty kid, but also because as a lost cow, she doesn't want to get others involved with her and make them lost. This of course leaves her in isolation, as said before, which is referenced in the Mayoi Maimai arcs OP, Karamichi, where we see Hachikuji surrounded by no one but other hers, symbolising not just the loneliness she feels having no one but herself, but also on this insistence on not relying on others, hence why in the OP she is relying on no one but other hers. However, as shown by how years of wandering lost, Hachikuji could not get to her mother's house alone. She cannot succeed alone, she must rely on others, and so she accepts the help of the knowledgeable adult Oshino and the relatable kid Aragi. In order to save herself, she has to accept the help of others by accepting her own shortcomings, and that it's alright for a kid not to be able to do everything. And this is something beautifully shown by her first words to Araki in the Mayoi Mayoi arc. And then her last words to him.
私しばらくはこの辺りうろうろしていると思いますから見かけたら話しかけてくださいね
After this arc, Hachikuji becomes not a lost cow, but a wandering spirit. She chooses to be lost, but not at a loss. She doesn't pass on because she finally feels like she has a purpose. And like the 10 years of endless wandering with no one but herself by her side, she now has one other person, one person who is just like her, Aragi. As think about it, it's through their meeting on Mother's Day, both Araki and Hachikuji were helped. For the first time since becoming an oddity, Hachikuji didn't lead someone astray, but helped them to return home. And so because of this, she takes up a new role of Araki's best friend, of someone to give him advice and help lead him down the right path and not get lost along the way. The elementary schooler becomes the wise sage to put the hero on his journey, yet even if this makes Hachikuji happy, it's not right. Hachikuji became a wandering spirit because she didn't yet want to move on. Even after making it home and overcoming her issues, she chose not to leave. As well, what does Hachikuji want more than anything else? A home to return to. Which is of course why in the Mayoi Mayoi arc, the only person who sees her apart from Aragi is Hanikawa, which is just a spectacular piece of foreshadowing on Nishuishin's part for Hanikawa's own arc, which of course results in her finding a home for herself. Though unlike Hanikawa, who looked away from her problems, Hachikuji instead tried to run away from them. She kept moving away from the lingering fact that she had yet to find a home. Even if she was promoted to a wandering spirit, the truth is that she is yet to overcome her oddity issue, as well she herself is still an oddity. And so in Oni Monogatari, Hachikuji the elementary schooler does the mature thing and makes a hard choice. She makes not the easy choice but the right choice, which is rather fitting considering how responsibility is arguably the biggest theme of that part. And apart from being one of the saddest moments in the entire series, Hachikuji passing on to the next life, or well actually falling down to hell, is the moment that Hachikuji finally acted like a proper adult and stopped running away from her problems. She understood what had to be done and so moved on by taking responsibility. As if the choices were to lead people astray or pass on, then the option was clear. Hachikuji never wanted to cause people grief or misfortune, instead she made her role helping Aragi, so she passes on so that he and the others around her wouldn't be burdened. Once again, it's a hard choice to make, but the right one. And in relation to the overall narrative of the story, in other words Aragi's coming of age story, this moment, this decision by Hachikuji is incredibly important, as it shows that Aragi, the character who refused to acknowledge his own faults, who refused to take responsibility for his actions, what has to be done, what it takes to be an adult and say goodbye to your adolescence. The conversations the two of them had were always a way for us, the reader, to see the childish side of Aragi that he is still reluctant to give up. Yet, he's an 18-year-old adult, and so even if it's hard, he has to grow up, just like how she had to move on. Once again, Hachikuji acts as a sage, as the guiding person for Aragi, the person who leads by example and shows him how to mature and come of age. She never could herself, so instead she will lead Aragi to a treasure she could not possess. It's incredibly poetic in this way, and to go even a layer deeper, if Hachikuji represents Aragi's childish side, then what relevance to the story does the fact she's already dead hold? Well, as you may have just realised, Hachikuji and Aragi's adolescence should already be gone from the world, but instead kept on persisting. And resolution only comes when Aragi stops looking away and proceeds towards the future, leaving the things that should be in the past. With all this in mind, the ending of Oni Monogatari really takes on an even greater importance, as by moving on, Hachikuji for one last time acts as the wise sage in a child's body, and leads Aragi to self-betterment, to an adulthood that she couldn't ever have. By letting her pass on and moving into the future, Aragi then acts to honour her memory, by becoming the adult she can never become, with the catalyst for all this being Hachikuji herself. She did finally become an adult then, she just did it through someone with the same childish heart as her, Aragi Kaomi. Yet as we all know, when Aragi himself falls down to hell, he doesn't just return to life alone, he brings Hachikuji alongside him, which is just a perfect mirror of the Mayoi Mayoi arc. As well, what happens in that arc? Aragi helps bring Hachikuji home, and Hachikuji helps bring Aragi home. And what happens in the Mayoi Hell arc? Hachikuji helps Araki come back to life and he does the same for her. The two help one another as they are kindred spirits, best friends who face the same issues and solve them together. They both took up the courage to stop running away and confronted their issues, and because of it ended up in a much better situation than before. All Hachikuji ever needed was a home. She got lost in Shirahebi Park trying to go home when instead she should have been in North Shirahebi Shrine instead. By becoming the god of the town, Hachikuji is able to combine her desire to help and guide others, which she chose to pursue after Araki initially took her home, along with a desire for a home which she puts off dealing with due to the fear she'd never meet her friends again. She was scared about what finding a home really meant, fearing that accepting death was the answer, but due to accepting the help of Araki, as she had done back when they first met, she was once more saved. She relied on others, she took responsibility, and because of all that, got a happy ending with a new place to call home. As all Hachikuji ever wanted was to make it home. When Araki took her to her mother's, that wasn't home. When she passed on to the afterlife, that wasn't home. Only when she became a god did she finally have a home of her own. It's a beautiful journey of finding one's place in the world. Overall, Hachikuji is a lost child in more ways than one. By relying on others, by not being scared to rely on others, she finds her way home. She finds a friend and finds a purpose. She shows the struggle of maturity, of the hard but right choices one must make, and in the end winds up happy. She's a lost girl who finds her home in more ways than one, and shows that in the end, no matter how misfortunate you may be, there's always a home for you to return to, even if it's yet to be clear where that home may be. The first time we meet Hachikuji, she is lost, wandering without a home, and when we see her at the end of the series, she has a home and is wandering for no other reason than to chat with her best friend. It may have taken her a while, she may have moved as slow as a snail, but she got there in the end. She's no longer lost, nor at a loss. She's just Hachikuji Mayoi, a girl with a shrine to call home.
ああ、いつでも遊びに行くよ。お前の家に。
はい、私の家に。
Comment of the week comes from Duelmaster Yuya. If you are interested in my literary endeavours, then why not check out my books Gang, Fluid Justice and People of Fate Volume 1, available at Amazon.com. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting this channel, then consider pledging to my Patreon, where for as little as £2.75 a month, you can get your name at the end of the video, like Hikari Desu, 7SO, Smokey McBobby and Ringjack9696. So with all that said and done, I've been Seth the Sin, the Deadly Sin of Geek, and I'm signing out. Stay safe, everyone.